"Ma'am, if that uniform is real, prove it," the officer said, and for one long heartbeat, every sound at the gas station seemed to disappear except the soft flutter of an American flag above the fuel pumps. The late afternoon sun cast long golden reflections across the concrete as customers paused beside their vehicles, coffee cups frozen halfway to their lips, while a young father instinctively reached for his son's shoulder. The little boy stared toward the woman standing calmly beside an aging dark blue SUV, her posture straight despite the growing circle of curious strangers. "Dad," he whispered, his small voice barely louder than the breeze. "Why does that soldier look so sad?" His father didn't answer because he didn't know what he was looking at anymore. Officer Ethan Walker adjusted his duty belt and kept his attention fixed on the woman in front of him. Her name, though no one there knew it yet, was Colonel Maya Brooks. She wore a weathered Army field jacket over a plain gray t-shirt, her boots dusty from hundreds of highway miles, and a military duffel rested neatly beside the gas pump. Nothing about her appearance seemed theatrical. Nothing looked exaggerated. Yet one anonymous phone call reporting possible stolen Valor had brought Officer Walker to the station within minutes, and he believed he was doing exactly what the law and his conscience required. Military identification, he requested firmly. Maya met his eyes with remarkable composure. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion earned after days without real rest, but her voice never trembled. "Officer, my identification is secured inside my vehicle. I'll retrieve it if you allow me to do so safely." Walker hesitated. Around them, phones slowly appeared as people sensed something unusual unfolding. A cashier inside the convenience store glanced nervously through the front window, while an elderly man wearing a faded veteran's cap quietly stepped outside, watching without saying a word. Walker noticed the army patches, the ribbons stitched above Maya's chest pocket, and the calm confidence in the way she carried herself. Somehow, instead of reassuring him, those details deepened his suspicion. He had attended seminars warning officers about individuals falsely claiming military service, and he remembered every presentation emphasizing confidence as one of the tactics imposters sometimes used. "Please remain where you are," he instructed. Maya nodded once. "I understand." There was no anger in her expression, no sarcasm, no attempt to embarrass him in front of the growing audience. She simply stood with both hands visible, breathing slowly as the evening wind carried the scent of gasoline and fresh rain from distant clouds gathering beyond the highway. A delivery driver quietly muttered that the situation didn't look right, while another customer insisted officers had every reason to verify suspicious claims. Opinions spread faster than facts, bouncing from person to person like loose change across the pavement. The little boy looked up again at his father. "She doesn't seem scary," he whispered. His father remained silent, unable to pull his eyes away. Officer Walker took another careful step forward, convinced that within minutes the truth would become obvious. He had no idea that before the sun disappeared below the horizon, everything he believed about the woman standing in front of him, and perhaps about the importance of listening before judging, would be tested in a way neither of them could possibly forget. 30 minutes earlier, before curious eyes gathered around the fuel pumps, and before questions replaced ordinary conversation, Colonel Maya Brooks had been driving south on Interstate 95 with the windows cracked open just enough to let the cool autumn air sweep through the cabin of her aging sport utility vehicle. More than 600 miles of highway stretched behind her after completing a demanding assignment, and the quiet hum of the tires against the pavement felt almost comforting. Her duffel bag rested on the passenger seat beside a neatly folded field jacket, while a stainless steel travel mug held the last few ounces of coffee that had long since gone cold. She had spent more than 2 decades wearing the same uniform, serving beside soldiers from every background imaginable, and if there was one lesson she carried beyond every military installation, it was that respect was earned through actions rather than appearances. That lesson had shaped every decision she made, even on ordinary afternoons like this one. She noticed an elderly woman standing beside a compact sedan with the hood raised near the edge of the gas station parking lot. The woman looked frustrated as she searched inside her trunk, and without a second thought Maya parked nearby, removed her gloves, and walked over with a warm smile. "Do you need an extra pair of hands?" she asked. The woman looked relieved. Together, they discovered the problem was nothing more than a loose battery connection. Maya tightened the terminal, using a small multi-tool she carried for long road trips, then stepped back while the engine started with a smooth, reassuring rumble. The woman's grateful smile reminded Maya of her own mother, who had always insisted that the smallest acts of kindness often stayed with people longer than grand speeches. After politely declining the offer of money, Maya wished the woman a safe drive and headed toward the convenience store. Inside, warm lights reflected across polished tile floors as fresh coffee brewed behind the counter. She selected a bottle of water, a turkey sandwich, and another cup of black coffee before greeting the cashier with the same quiet courtesy she showed everyone she met. Emma Collins recognized the army patches on Maya's jacket and thanked her for her service with genuine appreciation. Maya smiled softly. "Thank you for your kindness," she replied. "I'm just glad to be heading home for a few days." Emma noticed the deep circles beneath Maya's eyes and the careful way she stretched one shoulder, the ordinary signs of someone carrying more fatigue than they cared to admit. Outside, the American flag drifted steadily above the station, catching the last golden light before sunset painted the horizon in shades of amber and crimson. Maya stood beside her vehicle for a moment, letting the fresh air settle her thoughts. Home was still several hours away, but she could already picture her small front porch, the familiar oak tree in the yard, and the peaceful silence that always greeted her after long assignments. She reached for her wallet to pay for the fuel, unaware that somewhere nearby a misunderstanding had already begun to take shape. A passerby had noticed her military jacket, questioned whether it belonged to her, and placed a call that would transform an ordinary stop into an unforgettable evening. By the time she returned to the fuel pump holding her coffee, she saw flashing patrol lights reflecting across the windows of the convenience store, and although she did not yet know why they had arrived, years of discipline reminded her to remain calm, breathe steadily, and meet whatever came next with dignity instead of fear. The patrol vehicle rolled to a smooth stop near the entrance of the gas station, its emergency lights reflecting in the broad front windows like flashes of blue across calm water. Officer Ethan Walker stepped out with the steady confidence of someone who believed preparation and experience rarely failed him. During nearly a decade on the force, he had answered countless calls that turned out to be misunderstandings, but he had also encountered a handful of people falsely claiming military service for personal recognition. Those experiences had convinced him that careful verification protected the honor of those who truly served. Moments earlier, dispatch had relayed a report from an anonymous caller who questioned whether a woman wearing Army insignia at the station was representing herself honestly. The information was limited, but Walker decided it deserved immediate attention. His partner, Sergeant Daniel Ruiz, remained beside the patrol vehicle, quietly observing the scene before speaking. "Let us slow this down and find out exactly what is happening," Ruiz suggested in a measured tone. Walker nodded, though his focus had already settled on the woman standing beside the dark blue sport utility vehicle. She appeared composed, almost remarkably so, and that confidence only strengthened his determination to verify every detail before leaving. He approached with professional formality, introducing himself before explaining that he had received a report requiring him to confirm her military status. Maya listened, without interruption. The breeze gently lifted a loose strand of hair across her face as she answered with quiet respect. "I understand your responsibility, officer. I am happy to cooperate. My identification is secured inside my vehicle." Walker glanced toward the driver's side door and then back at her. The anonymous report echoed in his mind, reminding him not to make assumptions too quickly. "For everyone's safety, please remain where you are until we verify the situation," he replied. Maya gave another calm nod. She neither argued nor questioned his authority. Emma Collins stood just inside the convenience store, pretending to organize shelves while discreetly watching through the glass. She had served hundreds of travelers during long shifts behind the register, and something about Maya's calm voice reminded her of customers who carried quiet confidence rather than unnecessary attention. Outside, the elderly veteran in the faded cap slowly folded his newspaper beneath one arm. Years in uniform had taught him to recognize discipline long before rank insignia or paperwork. He watched Maya's posture, the relaxed position of her shoulders, and the instinctive way she kept her hands visible without being instructed twice. Those small details stirred a feeling he could not yet explain. Around the fuel pumps, ordinary conversations faded into whispers. A delivery driver paused beside his truck, while a family climbing into their minivan delayed, closing the doors. Several people instinctively reached for their phones, not out of hostility, but because unusual moments seemed to invite recording before understanding. Walker noticed the growing audience and understood that every decision now carried greater weight. He remained convinced that procedure mattered. Ruiz quietly walked closer and lowered his voice. "Let us verify before drawing conclusions." Walker answered just as quietly. "That is exactly what I intend to do." Neither man realized that the verification they were seeking would reveal far more than either expected. Maya stood beneath the gently waving American flag, breathing slowly as sunlight reflected from the polished fuel pumps onto the dusty fabric of her boots. She had spent an entire career believing patients often accomplished more than raised voices. Even now, surrounded by curious strangers and unanswered questions, she chose silence over frustration. The evening air carried the distant sound of traffic from the interstate, while above them the sky shifted from bright gold toward deep orange, as though the day itself were quietly holding its breath before the truth finally arrived. Officer Ethan Walker took a slow breath before speaking again, aware that every pair of eyes around the gas station now seemed fixed on the conversation. The evening had become unusually quiet. Even the steady flow of traffic from the interstate felt distant beneath the soft rustle of the flag overhead. "Ma'am, until we confirm your identity, I need you to remain here," he said. His tone stayed firm but controlled, reflecting the seriousness with which he viewed the report he had received. Colonel Maya Brooks met his gaze without hesitation. "Officer, I understand your responsibility," she answered calmly. "I only ask that you verify my status through the proper military channels before reaching any conclusions." Her voice carried neither frustration nor sarcasm. It was measured, respectful, and remarkably steady despite the growing attention surrounding them. Walker believed he had already heard similar requests before from individuals attempting to delay routine investigations. His previous experiences shaped his judgment, and he interpreted Maya's confidence as another reason to proceed cautiously. "We will verify everything," he replied. "Until then, I need you to follow my instructions." Maya gave a slight nod. "I intend to cooperate completely." Sergeant Daniel Ruiz watched the exchange with quiet concern. Something about Maya's composure continued to stand out to him. She never raised her voice. She never stepped toward the officers. She never challenged their authority. Instead, she stood with patient discipline that seemed almost instinctive. Ruiz leaned toward Walker and quietly suggested, "Let dispatch contact the military liaison before this grows any larger." Walker acknowledged the suggestion with a brief glance, but remained focused on securing the situation first. Around them, more customers drifted toward the edge of the parking lot. Some whispered among themselves. Others simply watched in silence, uncertain what to believe. Emma Collins stood at the front door of the convenience store with folded hands, her expression growing more uneasy by the minute. The elderly veteran slowly removed his cap and held it against his chest, studying Maya's bearing with increasing certainty that there was far more to this story than anyone yet understood. The young boy tugged gently on his father's sleeve again. "She keeps saying yes to everything," he whispered. "Why is everyone still looking at her like that?" His father struggled to answer. "Sometimes people have to wait for the facts," he finally said, though even he sounded uncertain. Maya glanced briefly toward her vehicle where her military identification remained inside a secured compartment. She knew one simple document could answer every question. Yet she also understood why reaching for it without permission could easily create unnecessary concern. Years of leadership had taught her that patience often protected everyone involved. She folded her hands comfortably in front of her and waited. The fading sunlight reflected across the polished hood of her vehicle, while the breeze carried the faint scent of fresh coffee from the open store entrance. Walker spoke into his radio, requesting verification through available channels. The response did not come immediately. The delay stretched longer than anyone expected. Each passing second seemed to make the gathering crowd more curious. Every unanswered moment invited another quiet assumption. Yet Maya refused to let those assumptions shape her behavior. She remained exactly where she had been asked to stand, her shoulders relaxed, her breathing slow, and her attention fixed on the officers before her. Deep inside, she believed that truth rarely needed to compete with noise. It only needed enough time to arrive. The minutes passed more slowly than anyone expected. The glow of the setting sun faded into soft shades of copper and blue, and the bright lights above the fuel pumps gradually became the strongest source of light in the parking lot. Every passing vehicle seemed to slow as drivers noticed the patrol car and the small crowd gathered near the convenience store. What had begun as an ordinary stop for gasoline had quietly become the center of everyone's attention. Officer Ethan Walker remained focused on procedure, but even he could feel the weight of dozens of silent eyes watching every decision. His radio remained unusually quiet after the initial request for verification. Dispatch had acknowledged the inquiry, yet the military confirmation had not arrived. That silence left room for uncertainty, and uncertainty often invited speculation. Several people standing nearby began whispering among themselves. One customer insisted that anyone wearing military insignia should always be able to prove it immediately. Another replied that there could be many reasonable explanations and urged everyone to wait before forming opinions. Emma Collins looked from the front counter toward Maya again and again, her concern becoming harder to hide. She had watched the woman help a stranded driver only a short time earlier without asking for anything in return. Nothing about her behavior matched the image of someone trying to deceive others. The elderly veteran finally stepped forward a few feet, careful to remain respectful. "Officer," he said calmly, "I have spent many years around soldiers. I cannot explain it, but her bearing reminds me of officers I served beside." Walker listened politely, but answered without raising his voice. "Sir, I appreciate your perspective. I also have a responsibility to verify the facts before reaching any conclusion." The veteran slowly nodded. He did not argue further, but disappointment settled quietly across his weathered face. Maya remained exactly where she had been standing, her hands relaxed and visible, her expression composed despite the attention surrounding her. Inside, she could feel the emotional weight of the moment pressing against years of discipline. She had stood through difficult briefings, demanding inspections, and long deployments where calm leadership mattered more than comfort. Even so, there was something uniquely painful about realizing that strangers were forming opinions about her before learning her name. She resisted every temptation to defend herself with emotion. Instead, she chose patience because patience had carried her through challenges far greater than uncomfortable silence. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz studied Maya carefully before looking back toward Walker. "Dispatch is taking longer than expected," he said quietly. "Military databases are not always immediate. We should allow the verification process to work." Walker agreed with a short nod, though concern had begun replacing certainty inside his own thoughts. He had expected a quick answer. The longer the delay continued, the more complicated the situation felt. Near the edge of the parking lot, the young boy continued watching Maya instead of the officers. "Dad," he asked softly, "why does she keep staying so calm?" His father looked at the woman standing beneath the gently moving American flag before answering. "Maybe because she believes the truth will eventually speak for itself." Those simple words drifted through the cool evening air, unheard by Maya, yet somehow reflecting the quiet conviction she carried inside. Above them, the flag continued to wave steadily against the darkening sky, while somewhere beyond the highway, an incoming call was finally making its way through the proper military channels. The evening settled into an almost unbelievable stillness. The conversations that had filled the parking lot only minutes earlier faded into scattered whispers, leaving the gentle hum of fuel pumps and the distant rush of interstate traffic to fill the silence. The American flag above the station continued to move with slow, steady rhythm, catching the last traces of sunlight before the sky surrendered completely to twilight. Colonel Maya Brooks lifted her eyes toward the flag for only a moment before lowering them again. She had spent countless mornings standing beneath that same flag on military bases across the country, through ceremonies, deployments, promotions, and farewells. Tonight, however, she stood beneath it as an ordinary traveler waiting for strangers to discover the truth she already carried. She felt no anger toward the people watching her. She understood something they did not. Facts often arrived more slowly than assumptions. Officer Ethan Walker remained several feet away, holding his radio while listening for an update that refused to come. His confidence had not disappeared, but uncertainty had quietly taken its place. Every additional minute without confirmation made him review each decision in his mind. He noticed again that Maya had never attempted to leave. She had never interrupted him. She had never demanded special treatment or reminded anyone of her accomplishments. She simply waited with remarkable patience, almost as though she had accepted that time itself would become her strongest witness. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz folded his arms and looked toward the highway before speaking softly enough that only Walker could hear. Not many people remain this calm when they believe they are being misunderstood. Walker answered after a thoughtful pause, or when they know they are telling the truth. The words surprised even him. Emma Collins quietly stepped outside carrying a small paper cup. She stopped several feet away from Maya. "Ma'am, I made fresh coffee a few minutes ago. It is getting cold outside. Would you like some?" Maya smiled with quiet gratitude. "Thank you. That is very thoughtful." Emma handed her the warm cup, and for a brief moment nothing else seemed to matter except one simple act of kindness between two strangers. The elderly veteran watched the exchange with moist eyes. "Respect always finds respect," he murmured almost to himself. Nearby, the young boy rested his head against his father's arm. "She smiled even after all of this," he whispered. His father nodded slowly. "Sometimes strength is very quiet." Maya wrapped both hands around the warm paper cup, letting the heat reach her tired fingers after hours of driving. She remembered something her first commanding officer had told her as a young lieutenant many years earlier. "Your rank may earn attention, but your character earns trust." Those words had remained with her through every assignment. They remained true now, even though no one around her yet knew who she was. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine trees from beyond the highway while the first evening stars appeared overhead. Then the silence finally broke. A clear voice came through Officer Walker's radio. Dispatch informed him that a military liaison officer had returned the verification request and was personally en route to the gas station with confirmed information. Walker looked up slowly. Ruiz turned toward him without saying a word. Maya quietly lowered the coffee cup, her expression unchanged. The truth was no longer approaching in theory. It was already on its way. The sound of an approaching vehicle broke the silence long before anyone saw its headlights turn into the station. A dark government sedan rolled slowly across the parking lot and came to a smooth stop beside the patrol cars. The door opened, and Captain Lisa Monroe stepped out wearing a neatly pressed Army service uniform. The polished insignia on her shoulders caught the bright station lights as she scanned the scene with calm, practiced eyes. She carried a slim leather portfolio in one hand and walked directly toward Officer Ethan Walker without hesitation. "I am Captain Lisa Monroe," she said professionally. "I received your request for military verification." Walker acknowledged her with a respectful nod. "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Captain. We are attempting to verify the identity of this individual before proceeding." Captain Monroe turned toward Maya. The moment their eyes met, her expression changed almost imperceptibly. She stood straighter, her shoulders squared, and her voice carried unmistakable respect. "Good evening, Colonel Brooks." The parking lot became perfectly still. Even the quiet conversations among the onlookers disappeared. Maya returned the greeting with the same calm dignity she had shown throughout the evening. "Good evening, Captain." Captain Monroe opened her portfolio and removed several official documents before addressing Officer Walker. "I can confirm through military records that Colonel Maya Brooks is an active-duty United States Army officer currently serving in command of a major logistics brigade. Her credentials are fully valid, and her travel status today matches official documentation." Walker remained silent for a long moment. The words settled over the gathering crowd with unexpected weight. The elderly veteran slowly closed his eyes and released a quiet breath before placing his cap back on his head with renewed pride. Emma Collins covered her mouth with one hand, remembering every ordinary kindness Maya had shown since arriving at the station. The young boy looked up at his father with wide eyes. "She really is a soldier," he whispered. His father nodded softly. "She always was." Sergeant Daniel Ruiz lowered his gaze briefly before looking back toward Maya with sincere respect. He had sensed there was more to the story, but even he had not imagined the woman standing quietly beside the fuel pump carried such extraordinary responsibility. Captain Monroe continued speaking in a steady voice. Colonel Brooks has dedicated more than 20 years to military service, including multiple overseas assignments and leadership positions involving thousands of service members. Her record reflects exceptional professionalism. No one spoke. The only sound came from the gentle movement of the American flag above them. Officer Walker felt the certainty that had guided him throughout the evening quietly dissolve. He replayed every conversation in his mind, every assumption, every moment when patience might have led him to listen more carefully before allowing first impressions to shape his judgment. Maya did not step forward. She did not celebrate being proven right. She simply stood with the same quiet composure that had never left her. The fading evening light reflected softly across her uniform as though nothing about her had changed. In truth, nothing had. The only thing that had changed was what everyone else could finally see. Captain Monroe carefully returned the documents to her portfolio before looking toward Walker once more. The verification is complete, officer. Thank you for taking the time to ensure the facts were established. Walker slowly lowered his radio. For the first time since arriving at the gas station, he realized the most important lesson of the evening had never been about confirming a military record. It had been about recognizing the value of withholding judgment until the truth had the chance to speak for itself. For several long seconds, no one moved. The tension that had held the entire parking lot together slowly dissolved into a quiet stillness that felt heavier than any argument could have been. Officer Ethan Walker took one careful step toward Colonel Maya Brooks, the confidence that had marked his arrival replaced by thoughtful humility. He removed his cap, holding it respectfully at his side before speaking. Colonel Brooks, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I allowed my assumptions to move faster than my patience. I should have waited for the facts before allowing my judgment to settle. His words were simple. There were no excuses hidden inside them, no attempt to shift responsibility onto the anonymous caller or the confusing circumstances. He accepted ownership of his decision without hesitation. Maya looked at him for a brief moment before answering. There was no triumph in her expression, no satisfaction at seeing another person humbled. Instead, there was only the calm steadiness that had remained with her since the first moment he approached. Officer, she replied gently, every profession carries responsibility. Mine does. Yours does. We both wear uniforms because people trust us to serve with integrity. That trust grows stronger when we are willing to listen before we decide. Her words settled over everyone standing nearby. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz lowered his eyes with quiet respect, recognizing that the most meaningful lesson of the evening had not come from official documents or military records, but from the character of the woman standing before them. Captain Lisa Monroe offered a small, approving smile without interrupting. She had witnessed many leaders throughout her career, and she knew genuine leadership often revealed itself most clearly in moments when someone had every reason to respond with anger, but instead chose dignity. Emma Collins slowly stepped forward from the entrance of the convenience store. Colonel, she said softly, thank you for showing all of us what grace looks like. Maya smiled warmly. Thank you for the coffee. It meant more than you probably realized. Emma's eyes filled with emotion as she nodded. The elderly veteran approached next, stopping several feet away before offering a respectful salute. Maya immediately returned it with quiet precision, and the old man's face brightened with unmistakable pride. I thought I recognized a lifetime of service, he said with a gentle smile. You reminded me tonight that character always speaks louder than rank. Nearby, the young boy slipped his small hand into his father's. Dad, he whispered, I want to be calm like her someday. His father squeezed his hand gently. That kind of strength takes years of practice. Officer Walker listened to every word. He realized that no disciplinary lecture could have taught him what this single encounter already had. Procedures mattered. Verification mattered. Yet treating people with dignity while seeking the truth mattered just as much. He extended his hand respectfully. After a brief pause, Maya accepted the handshake. It was firm, professional, and free from resentment. No cameras captured a dramatic confrontation. No raised voices filled the evening air. Instead, everyone present witnessed something far rarer. They watched two public servants acknowledge that accountability and respect could exist together. Above them, the American flag continued to move gently in the evening breeze, illuminated by the bright station lights, as though quietly reminding everyone that the ideals it represented belonged not to one uniform or another, but to every person willing to live by them with honesty, humility, and compassion. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but no one hurried back to ordinary life quite the way they had arrived. Conversations became quieter, faces more thoughtful, as though everyone carried away something larger than the memory of an unusual evening at a neighborhood gas station. Colonel Maya Brooks thanked Captain Lisa Monroe for making the trip, then picked up her well-worn duffel bag and carefully placed it back inside her sport utility vehicle. The coffee Emma Collins had offered was still warm, enough to hold in her hands, and before climbing into the driver's seat, Maya walked back to the convenience store one last time. She purchased another cup of coffee, this time paying for it herself, and left a generous tip on the counter. Emma looked surprised. "After everything that happened, you are still thinking about someone else," she said quietly. Maya smiled. "Kindness does not become less valuable because the day becomes difficult." Emma nodded, carrying those words with her long after the station closed that night. Outside, the elderly veteran approached Maya one final time. "Colonel," he said with quiet sincerity, "thank you for reminding an old soldier that dignity never goes out of style." Maya extended her hand, and the two shared a respectful handshake before he walked back toward his pickup truck with a lighter step than before. Nearby, the young boy looked at his father and then gathered enough courage to walk over. "Ma'am," he asked shyly, "how do you stay so calm?" Maya knelt just enough to meet him at eye level. "You remember that every person deserves respect," she answered gently, "even when they do not understand you yet." The boy smiled and nodded as though he had just learned something he would never forget. His father thanked Maya with quiet gratitude before leading his son back to their family vehicle. Officer Ethan Walker remained standing near his patrol car, watching the parking lot gradually return to normal. The bright lights reflected softly across the pavement, while the flag above continued its slow, steady movement in the evening breeze. He realized that although the official report would describe a routine verification and its outcome, the most important part of the story would never appear on any form. It would remain with him each time he answered another call, reminding him that fairness required more than procedure. It required patience, humility, and the willingness to let evidence arrive before conclusions did. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz quietly joined him. "Long day," he said. Walker nodded. "A valuable one." Across the lot, Maya started the engine of her vehicle. The familiar sound settled into a gentle idle before she pulled away from the fuel pump. As she drove slowly toward the exit, Officer Walker stood at attention and offered a respectful salute. Maya noticed him through the windshield. Without hesitation, she returned the salute with calm precision before continuing onto the highway. Neither of them spoke another word. The station lights grew smaller in her rearview mirror until they disappeared behind the curve of the road. Ahead stretched miles of open highway beneath a sky filled with quiet stars. The road home looked exactly the same as it had only an hour earlier, yet something invisible had changed. A misunderstanding had ended, but understanding had begun. Long after every witness returned home, one image remained in memory more clearly than any flashing lights or official confirmation. It was the image of an American flag moving gently above a quiet gas station, while two people in different uniforms chose respect over pride, truth over assumption, and character over anger. In the end, that was the moment everyone carried home.